This is Mrs. Wainwright's Math Class, Chapter 1, Lesson 2C. Today we'll do multiplication patterns using basic facts when there are ending zeros. Today's learning target: by the end of the lesson you should confidently be able to say, I can use a basic fact and a pattern to multiply by two-digit numbers. And I love this lesson because it's all about the lazy man's trick. Look, I like to get things right, and I love to get good grades. But you know what? I don't love to put a lot of time into it. I'd like to be able to get the good grades in the fastest, easiest way possible so I can spend the rest of the time doing what I want to do. Do you feel the same way? If your answer is yes, then you're going to want to learn this lazy man's trick. A lazy man's trick is a lazy man's trick that's good if it works every single time. This trick will work every single time, so it's a great lazy man's trick. Let's see how it works. And for this lazy man's trick, when you have numbers that end in zeros, so the zeros are at the end of the number, you can simply multiply the basic facts and then tack on all of the ending zeros. Let's see how this works. So in example number 1, my problem is 300 times 20. In 300, my basic fact that is not an ending zero is 3. In 20, my basic fact that is not an ending zero is 2. So I will say 3 times 2 equals 6 and write it down. Then I will count up all of my ending zeros. 1, 2, 3. I have 3 ending zeros, so I will add 3 zeros to my answer. I see that this is a 4-digit answer, so I have to count backwards for my commas. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, comma. So my final answer is 6,000. 3 times 2 equals 6. Tack on my 3 ending zeros. That gives me 6,000. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Let's take a look at problem number 2. I have 78 times 100. Well, in the number 78 there are no ending zeros, so my basic fact is 78. In the number 100 there are ending zeros, and my basic fact is 1. So 78 times 1 equals 78. Count all of my ending zeros. There are 1, 2. Tack on 2 ending zeros. I see that my answer is a 4-digit answer, so I have to count backwards for commas. 1, 2, 3, comma. My final answer is 7,800. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. Example number 3 says 380 times 70,000. Well, in 380 there is an ending zero, so my basic fact is 38. In 70,000 there are ending zeros. My basic fact is 7. I need to solve 38 times 7, but I don't know that by heart, so I'll use some scrap paper. So I use scrap paper and solve 38 by 7. 7 times 8 is 56. Put down the 6, carry the 5. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 5 is 26. Put down the 26 and write that on the line, because 38 times 7 equals 266. Now I'll count all of my ending zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and tack on my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros at the end. This answer obviously has more than 3 digits, so I need to count backwards for my commas. 1, 2, 3, comma, 1, 2, 3, comma. My final answer is 26,600,000. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 3 right now. You may see some problems like problem number 4 that could be tricky. Don't let this trick you. So again, we take a look at our first number, which is 40. It has an ending 0. Our basic fact is 4. The next number is 5,000. It has some ending zeros. The basic fact is 5. We say 4 times 5 equals 20. But anytime your basic fact ends in a 0, you have to stop and say, uh-oh, there's a tricky 0, because that 0 could trick you. We're not going to let that happen. And why do we say, uh-oh, there's a tricky 0? Because this 0 could mess me up. It's part of my basic fact. It's not a tack-on 0, and I have to remember that. So what do I do to help me remember that? I underline it to remind me of that. So I'll underline my 0. Now I go back to my problem and I count my ending zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. and tack those onto the problem. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I see that this answer is more than 3 digits, so I need to count backwards and put in my commas. 1, 2, 3, comma, 1, 2, 3. I don't start a number with a comma, so that's done. Therefore, 40 times 5,000 equals 200,000. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 4 right now. Example 5 is another type of problem that may trick you also. You can't always assume you know what the answer is. You need to solve a problem like this to be sure. Number 5 says, how many zeros are in the product of 800 times 4,000? So let's solve it. But before I solve it, every year we always get the kids who say, I'm too smart for this. I could just count my zeros and that's my answer. In 800 there's 2, and 4,000 there's 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. So the answer is 5 zeros. Well, let's work it out and see if that's true. To work it out, I will take my basic fact, 8 times 4 equals 32. And I count my 5 zeros and I tack them on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at my final answer and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, and that is correct. So for this problem, that worked fine. The answer is there are 5 zeros. But now let's take a look at problem number 6 and see how that works. Again, it says how many zeros are in the product. And again, we have students who say, I'm too smart for this. I'll just count my zeros. 1, 2, 3. And they answer, there are 3 zeros in the product. But let's solve it and see if that's true. In 60, my basic fact is 6. In 500, my basic fact is 5. 6 times 5 equals 30. So I have to say, uh-oh, there's a 0. Now I add my 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. And how many zeros are in this answer? And notice it doesn't say how many ending zeros did you add on. The question simply says how many zeros are in the product. If my product is 30,000, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros in the final product. So the answer to this question is not 3 zeros, because that's wrong. There are 4 zeros in the final product. So you always have to solve your problem, because if your basic fact answer ends in a 0, there will be a different number of zeros than just the ending zeros. Lesson to learn here, solve it, then count. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 5 and 6 right now. Problem number 7 could also be a tricky problem, so let's take a look at it. I have 502,000 times 10. Well, in 502,000 I need to find my basic fact, but there's a 5 and a 0 and a 2. So do I count the 5 or the 2 or 52? What do I do? Well, let's focus in on this 0. That 0, is it an ending 0? No, it's not. It doesn't end the number, it's in between 2 other digits. Therefore, it's not an ending 0. And if it's not an ending 0, it's actually part of the basic fact. So therefore, in 502,000, my basic fact is 502. In 10, my basic fact is 1. 502 times 1 equals 502. Now we can count those ending zeros. And again, if it's not part of the ending zeros, you don't count the zeros. So I'm going to count just my ending zeros, which is 1, 2, 3, plus the 1 in 10 makes 4. I'll tack on those ending zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4 ending zeros. Of course, this answer has more than 3 digits, so I must count backwards and put in my commas. 1, 2, 3, comma. 1, 2, 3, comma. My final answer, 502,000 times 10 equals 5,020,000. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 7 right now. So as we review this lesson, if you're multiplying facts with ending zeros, you can simply find the basic facts, multiply them. 3 times 2 equals 6. Count all your ending zeros, add them on, and that will give you your final answer. Or if you have a basic fact that's more than 1 digit, that's fine. And here my basic fact is 78 times 1 gives me 78. My 2 ending zeros tack on to give me 7,800. In example number 3, we saw that you could have a problem where you need to work it out on paper. My basic fact is 38 times 7. I worked it out right down here. I counted my 5 ending zeros to get my final answer. Example number 4, sometimes we have a trick, and sometimes your basic fact ends in a 0. And when this happens, you have to say, uh-oh, there's an ending 0, and underline it so you don't get confused with the zeros that you'll be tacking on. That does not count as part of the tack-on zeros. Then you count your tack-ons, in this case there are 4, and tack them on after that underlined 0. In problem number 5 and 6, sometimes it will ask you how many zeros are in the product. Don't just assume you know by counting them, solve them. Because in number 5, you counted 5 and there were 5. But in number 6, your basic facts, 6 times 5 equals 30, that ends in a 0. So if you just counted 3 zeros, that would be wrong. The final answer actually has 4 zeros. So when they ask how many zeros are in a product, solve the problem, then count. And finally, in number 7, remember you can only count ending zeros. So if a 0 is between two other digits, it is not an ending 0, and it is part of the basic fact. These basic facts were 502 times 1 equals 502, and then we counted our 1, 2, 3, 4 ending zeros and tacked them on. Good luck with this lesson.